Hello, hello, hello. Thank you. This is Miguel Serrano from the South. Thanks for requesting videos in English. Uh, Not that I'm going to exactly repeat myself. I've been doing lots of videos in Spanish, and I'm going to give you some high-level thinking here. Uh, from the South, as I said, let's start saying that the South is not Alabama or not Georgia or Florida unless you live in your belly button. But hey, weird thing, I've got a few people that have been snooping, watching my videos from England, where I do not recall that I know anyone. So maybe it's Mr. Johnny Rotten or the Tavistock Institute, who cares? So, what about our brain? I've been talking about brain hacks, and our brain is not a content generator. You know, it's more like a processor. It processes content. So, where does this content come from? From our deep unconsciousness, from our spiritual self, from the ultimate mind, through archetypes that take possession of us. Maybe the latter. Um, Also, of course, without a doubt, from the environment. But when did this start? It started 80,000 years ago when we appeared as a species and Neanderthals were still roaming the earth. Some Neanderthals have blended their DNA with ours, have crossed and mixed, so Neanderthals are not a different species because they've had fertile descendants with us, non-Neanderthals, or maybe I have Neanderthal blood too. Whatever. Anyhow, this thing where our thoughts come from, if such thing exists, or if such thing is in your possession, because not necessarily everybody has this mechanism from which thoughts come, which our brain processes. We could call it our spirit, or we could call it our will, if we have a will, if we've been able to train ourselves. It's like a muscle, you know. If you don't use it, you lose it. Uh, how do we know if we're able to even think? I already explained that in a previous video, but if you're able to stop thinking at will and say, okay, idle, no thoughts. When I do that, I first think, oh, I'm not thinking anymore, which means I'm thinking. So most people have a very limited series of thoughts, a repertoire of thoughts that repeat themselves in sort of a loop, uh, or sort of like, let's say, call it a parrot or a machine that's talking within our head. And then again, we verbalize these thoughts. Some of these thoughts we can trace that they come from a previous thought that we afterwards verbalize to ourselves, and they become like our conscious thoughts. And we also have mechanisms to hide thoughts from ourselves or hide feelings from which our thoughts may emerge. And if that's the case, they would emerge from like our mammalian brain or our feelings, you know, our emotions, or even our reptilian brain, which is a lot more basic. And you can look it up, the R complex. Again, the fact that we have a reptilian brain and R complex that dominates our neocortex speaks of maybe the reason why all these reptilian theories have come up, and the reptilians are among us and we're not alone. Anyhow, so the environment in which we are born also programs us, and we become accustomed to certain lines of thought and certain social habits and personal habits that become processed, or it's like a blender that never stops and goes around and around in our heads. So what do we believe? Does it even matter what we believe? I mean, most of us once believed in Santa Claus, right? And who's to say that our belief system, our current belief system, adult or whatever, modern, evolved, is not just the same, a belief that has no substance in reality? And who's to say that a child's mind doesn't actually make Santa Claus be true somehow as a spiritual thing? But again, that would require a lot of power, and power to create a reality around us from our thought or from our mental processes, out of which our thoughts emerge and are mulled or are uh, centrifuged in our head and repeated almost over and over again with no new ideas emerging or coming. So if that's the case, and that is where humanity stands as a species and also as individuals, then it also means that, okay, what is going on in this world in which we're at war? Clearly in the world war, as I explained also in a Spanish video, a friend of mine from Ukraine, Artem, arrived here. He escaped from Lugansk, and now he's back in Lugansk. Oh wow, he found this place was his home, but now he longs Chile again. No surprise. But the war is a world war, at least from the moment in which someone from Lugansk arrived to the final frontier in Patagonia, where I live. So it is a war of people that believe things and that don't even know where these beliefs come from, or are mostly unable to track their own belief system. I know some of you are going, what a bunch of crap. I know what I think. I know what I know. So how do you know what you know? Or how do you know what part of you knows what about what you know or what you think you know? So that's the real matrix we live in. It's our own mental matrix, somehow our collective matrix, which becomes a shared thing. And somehow our ancestors, or the previous species which I've already mentioned, the Neanderthals, may have reached that point at which, let's say you invest in chickens, and you got a big, what do you call it, a den or a house, whatever, of chickens, un gallinero, where you want to produce eggs. But these chickens are not producing eggs. By the way, that's happening in the United States. They say it's the feed. But if your chickens do not produce eggs, you want to recuperate part of your investment, and you probably kill the chickens and eat them or sell them, and or you make sausages out of them. So if our purpose is to create consciousness and to be conscious, to understand our own thoughts and our own thought process, and to be able to discern where these thoughts come from and how they emerge, well, certainly we are failing as a species, because we just prefer to go about in our autopilot. So these masters of war and warlords that are pushing the world to the verge of a nuclear disaster are no better than monkeys with machine guns, no better than a war among idiots. But then there's also the mental sphere of things at which all of this is occurring. And in that mental sphere, in which somehow or for some reason, this possibility that we have of becoming conscious, although we're maybe wasting it because we don't even pay attention to our own thoughts and to our own thought process, this possibility is still there. So we could still lay an egg and not be made into sausages, because miners of consciousness will recuperate their investment in this planet. And somehow that seems to have happened with the Neanderthals, and somehow it is possible that as a superior model is replacing the Neanderthals, and they're still hanging around, they somehow failed. It's like when you're in first grade, you take the final exam and you don't know shit, so you don't pass the second grade. So you repeat first grade, but you already know the content. You already know what the final test is like. So they perhaps already know what the final test is like. And hence, if we trace our own matrix, social and mental matrix, back to those origins, and we understand how far we have come in losing contact with that essential self, which we may have once been as a baby that doesn't know, or as a species that is new and introduced, like an upgrade on a chip, in which the previous chip is replaced, and soon enough there is no more software that is written for this older chip. But the older chip still wants to survive, so it behooves the older chip to demonstrate that the newer chip doesn't work. It's got some sort of a failure in its architecture. And that is pretty much a good allegory of what is happening now. So, again, it's not really about information. There's so many videos out there giving out information on this, information on that. And actually, the best way to hide information is not to suppress it, but is to produce imitations of it, or I was about to say clones, but clones would be identical, twisted clones that through that conceal what is the true understanding that we are trying to reach as an unconscious species that is trying to become conscious of ourselves. So that's the real matrix, and also it is my hypothesis that the days of the masters have gone, and the masters are no longer here to help us. I was lucky enough to meet a true master and receive initiation from him, and his name was Dario Salas Summers. You can actually look up his books, and what really matters about his books is that he tries to signal to us a way for us to become more conscious of ourselves and of our surroundings, and the part of that is to be able to see reality the way it is, without the aberrations of these matrix filters that we've created for ourselves, to be lazy, to not do the hard work that it takes. And really, when you look at all of these horrible things that are occurring in the world, networks of pedophiles that are calling the shots and controlling the leaders through blackmail and leading towards world war. If you look at what Azov Battalion is doing in Ukraine, and the way they've been mistreating inhumanly those, as my friend Artem, who have endured this for more than 10 years. I mean, the war didn't start in February last year. It started 10 years ago, and it's been a very cruel war. Well, it is because maybe the final exam is here, and it's not about like putting your eyes white and saying, "Oh no, I'm good." It's about actually understanding the true psychopaths that we are, and if we are able to see that in ourselves, we will be able to see that in the rest. And at the same time, that reptilian drive towards psychopathy, or however you pronounce it, which comes from the lower part of our brain, will lose power over us, and we will be able to start to become our own masters. I insist, I'm not a master, and I do not intend to be anybody's master, let alone through YouTube. I'm just sharing what I understand about how things work, and how we dysfunctionally try to work. And what do I got here? Some nosy. Well, really, that's what the war's about. I was about to forget the most important phrase of this. The war is about controlling our mind. And if we do not control our own mind, then we are our first enemy. And if we do not control our own mind, something or someone will, either at the monkey human level of making us believe in Santa Claus, or making us believe in democracy, or other stuff in which we believe, or in terms of being able to see reality as it is and not fearing it and not being appalled by it, because it is that way for a reason. And the reason is for us to understand it and for us to understand ourselves. Signing off. It's been a pleasure. It's a confusing topic.